like to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the December 18th, 2023 Design Review Committee meeting. The DRC is a subcommittee of the Historic Zoning Commission. Meetings informal and designed to guide applicants through the process of obtaining a certificate of appropriateness or a COA for projects within the city's historic districts in light of the Historic District Design Guidelines. Applicant participation in DRC meetings is voluntary but always highly recommended. Changes made or suggestions taken by the applicant based on discussions with DRC are the applicant's choice, but DRC makes no representation as to whether any changes or suggestions made during the meeting will be approved by the voting body, the Historic Zoning Commission. There are 8 items on this afternoon's agenda. When your item is called, please introduce yourself, make sure you hit the green button, and generally describe your item in about 2 to 3 minutes. First up, discussion of window replacement at 300 4th Avenue South, Forest Manor Apartments. Sean Moule, is that how you say it? Mowell, applicant. Come on up, Sean. Make sure you hit your green button and give us a brief overview here.
Yeah, so I was called by the owner, Mr. Rockford, for window replacement there, and I had done a window replacement with the city of Franklin before, so I knew that the guidelines was either a wood exterior window or a composite window. So I quoted it both ways, and they are pursuing replacing the windows in their apartment with composite fiberglass windows from Pella Windows.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Forest Manor apartment complex, constructed in 1966, is located within the downtown Franklin Historic District and is contributing within the district. The guidelines recommend that one should preserve and maintain historic windows and historic window openings. The amount of decay is not shown for every window within the picture, so it is difficult to determine if the windows should be replaced or to be rehabilitated. Additional photos or information would be needed to make a determination. Thank you.
So, do you know when this building was built? Do you know the age of the building?
I know it was built in the 60s.
In the 1960s? And you think the windows currently are from the 1960s?
They appear to be original wood windows from the 60s.
And right now you're considering putting in a fiberglass composite window?
Yes.
Do they have the look of wood, or are they just a fiberglass window?
So they have a wood grain textured exterior that's actually created from the fiberglass manufacturing process, and it's a painted white window which would match the existing windows. So it does have, it's not a slick or a smooth surface, it is a textured surface.
And would it have the same type of profile that a wood window would have?
It would be a double hung window, meaning the bottom would go down and the top would go up, which is similar, or is the same style that they currently have. The profiles would be a little more narrow. So I would say slightly more narrow than the existing window has.
So you're talking about the muntins themselves?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
What I'm seeing on the photographs, it looks like you have 8 lights over 8 lights. Mm-hmm. Were you proposing to put that back or just do 1 over 1?
I proposed with matching grill pattern. That same grill design would be a matching grill pattern.
So the grill would be like a snap-in? It would snap in?
The grill would be grills between the glass.
So it would be true divided light?
No, it would be in between the 2 panes of glass.
I see.
In the composite scenario.
I'd like to hear more from staff on the guidelines for, something from this vintage.
The guidelines do recommend to replace with what is there. So if it is a wood window, then the guidelines would recommend to replace it with what is there. And with recapping with what Elizabeth said, the pictures really didn't show exactly the deterioration. I believe that the intent is to replace 68 windows, and so,
Yeah, every window and no doors is what the proposal was to Mr. Roqueford.
Can you tell us more about the extent of the damage that you've observed?
Yeah, so the main issue, there is some mildew and some like mildew and black spotting on the windows. That's one issue, and then especially in the bathrooms, because this is a full wood window, and there's not always ventilation because a lot of these windows are painted shut or they don't go up and down anymore, so you don't get proper ventilation. And egress is also an issue because these are residences. So windows that aren't opening, there's some concerns about egress as these windows get harder and harder to open, just for tenants to be able to escape in case of emergency. But the windows themselves, there's not a lot of full rot. You know, sometimes you've seen a wood window, it's truly rotting out. More of a mold and mildew issue just over time.
I'm concerned about when you say that these will have a double pane. And my experience is that when you do that, you lose the sense of that profile. So that's the problem I'm having, quite frankly.
Anybody else? I guess I would follow up with some similar concerns. I can confidently say I don't think the guidelines allow for grills between the glass in any regard. So they need to be simulated divided light, which means the grills they're still stuck on the outside. They're not true divided light, but I think that's appropriate. This particular building, it does obviously fall under our historic guidelines, but it is a little later in vintage. Those particular window profiles on this building are not what we would see in a turn of the century or 20s, where it's, you know, the different sticking patterns. They look pretty thin. It's kind of hard to tell. I would recommend that when you come back, you document the damage more, just some more pictures. And I'd love to see, it looks like they all have storm windows on the outside.
They do.
And so it's kind of hard to tell the profiles even without the storm windows coming off. So love to see those. Other thing I was going to say is that kind of embossed, you know, wood texture on a window. We typically avoid that because we don't see it on historic buildings. Even a real wood window from an old building, almost any of them, the wood was smooth sawn. It wasn't an embossed wood of any sort. So even in siding profiles, I think the guidelines talk about siding specifically should be a smooth finish, not an embossed kind of fake wood finish. So I'd recommend that it be smooth. I don't have a problem with fiberglass necessarily, that we get a good idea of what the profiles are, even if it's just a picture of the window you're recommending using, and then definitely not grills between the glass. They are a lot easier to clean, but not necessarily appropriate in historic districts. Anything else? Any questions you have specifically?
I mean, is there a pre-approved fiberglass or like you know, I know that there's two categories of approved windows: the wood over wood, you know, a true wood window, wood exterior versus a clad, and then a composite window. Is there within the section of composite windows a pre-approved, or is it always case by case?
I don't know that you all have a list, do you?
you mean like brands that we
Yeah,
would?
because for example, Pella has just one composite window. It's our Impervia fiberglass window, so it may be pre-approved because we are pretty well tied in with historic. You know, we take a lot of historic consideration.
We don't dictate which brands. We just kind of care about the material and its appearance. So as long as they meet both those marks, we don't care. We don't specify which brand.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, just my 2 cents, for lack of a better term, but I would say a if we could go with a clad window with true divided lights. See, our fiberglass product does not have divided lights, like simulated divided lights. It only has grills between the glass. If we could go with a clad product, even though that is not currently approved, but the profiles are much more similar to historic windows. Pella's worked very hard on that to get those profiles, but it is an aluminum exterior. So if that was an option, the thing that was challenging, is a true wood window. For one, for an owner, it's more upkeep, and for two, it drives the cost up quite a bit because only in our highest end window do we have that
All wood.
that all wood option. So I don't know if a clad product is ever considered. That would be maybe the sweet spot where we could get, simulated divided lights and the historic profiles, but not have the cost and maintenance of a wood over wood window.
How do y'all feel about that?
I'm pretty sure our guidelines speak against an aluminum clad window.
They do, yeah.
So we have to be in very, very, extreme circumstances. I think the board may have approved something like that in the past in a very unique situation, but I don't think this qualifies as a unique situation.
Any other thoughts? No. Well, I don't have any other advice to offer. I think the all wood, if that's what gets us simulated divided light, I think that's the direction you might have to go, and look at maybe there's some other brands offerings out there. I don't know, but that's the best advice we can offer you for today. So we appreciate it.
Do you know what kind of wood they use that Pella uses in their high-end wood window?
It's a ponderosa pine. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. Okay, next up, discussion of alterations. Courtyard, 159 First Avenue North, Andy Berry applicant. Give us a brief introduction and please.
Steve Bacon here. I represent the owner of Harpeth Apartment Associates on this one. Yep.
Andy Berry, Smith G Studio, and I will be presenting. I suppose you have it up there, but I also have some loose copies if need be. So, shall I go? Or
Anybody want hard
do you have
copies?
to read like a?
I'm good. We're good.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So this is to add an arched sort of top, I guess, over the columns that are installed on site out here. There are some existing photos. This is detail number 6 on our drawing. There are 2 photos of the columns as installed, and we are looking to add a metal trellis over those. Disregard the future signage that was only shown for just a sort of a conceptual for discussion purposes. I understand the signage is a whole other kind of separate submittal. So the arch is it started off as like a true kind of circular arch, and we've flattened it to get it closer to sort of a typical proportion that you'd see. It has a small plinth to sort of take up for the flattening of it, and then it will be covered in some vines similar to what we are proposing at the AT&T box over on the side over there. I don't know if there's a whole bunch else to add. Steve, I mean, that's It's pretty
No, this,
straightforward.
I pulled it from the agenda last time because staff was opposed to it, so I'll let them make the remarks. But I do want to appeal to you on some of the design that we feel is important, and that's why we're back here. And I want to talk about that. We did get approved at one time on a flat wooden piece. It would drop our sign down below to about 7.5 feet. So we want to brand this courtyard. We're a little surprised staff went against it. We thought the arch we got approved on a 30-foot wide driveway going into the hotel is something that's in keeping. There are arches in this historic district. We don't think it overwhelms, so and the arch is our logo, right? So it's important. I understand from some of staff's comments again, but I would just have to disagree. I think it's important. And I think one of the things that we would, and we have not done, because I had forgotten about it, about growing vines over the arch at the hotel, and we would do the same thing here. So we would like to get metal fencing around that transformer. We had a wood fence, and we had an incident with a small kid that almost got hit by a car. So we don't want that fence more than 4 feet high, but we want to grow vines around it, and then eventually up the arch. We're trying to brand it, so naming this courtyard is important to us. So I need that sign somewhere.
Okay.
We need to bring attention as much as we can, excuse me, to the retailers back there. So.
Thank you, Steve. Staff?
Thank you. The construction of the archways was previously approved in December of 2022. The previously approved design consisted of a flat wooden arbor top. This proposal includes the addition of 2 arbors, one fronting East Main Street between the Italian restaurant and the bookstore, and the other fronting 2nd Avenue North at the alleyway between the bank building and the hotel. The arbors will be identical with masonry columns that will be reused from the previous Harpeth Square. The top of each arbor will utilize rectangular tube steel in an arch design. Compatibility is achieved by maintaining the range of materials historically present in the district. Unit size and visual and tactile textures of the materials should be corresponding to the main structure. The proposal does not meet these guidelines, and the arbor will be seen from the street view and could detract or overwhelm the historic district due to the tall scale, design, and materials. The use of arbors with a rounded metal top is not typical in the downtown Franklin Historic District. While the design is utilized elsewhere on the Harpeth Square property, it is located in a more concealed location that does not front East Main Street. Additionally, the proposed sign noted in the design is not a permitted sign type, as it does not meet sign guidelines within the historic district, nor is it a sign type found in the zoning ordinance as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any thoughts?
I think that, I'm sorry Mary isn't here. I'm sorry. I know she's sick today, but this is an area that we have wanted to see change from what it was. So I feel like that this does work with your branding, and I'm not sure that I necessarily see that it's problematic. So.
Josh?
Yeah, I think I would tend to agree. I mean, to the extent the signage is not in compliance with the ordinance, I think that's a different issue than us. But, you know, I know that there has, I think there was some discussion last time about how successful the arbor on the parking side was in reality versus I wasn't on the commission when that was approved, but I know I think that was discussed. But the fact that this is smaller in scale, it doesn't.
Yeah, there's a big height difference. You know,
Yeah,
we're spanning 30 feet over there.
Right.
We're spanning 9.
Right. I think that feels very distinguishable to me.
Okay. And we did, in response to staff, we did, like Andy said, we did lower that arch. Chris Nethercutt wants to fabricate it, so we lowered it down. We felt that might be a little more presentable. And to Mary's point, because she keeps reminding me, we are going to grow something on it, especially the one at the hotel. So I totally forgot about that.
I agree with my fellow commissioners. I don't see this being problematic. I mean, You have a metal topped arch already on Second Avenue. It seems to all fit the same theme. So,
Okay.
my comments.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't have a problem with it necessarily. I mean, the signage type, I don't want it to come back and bite you in the rear because
Yeah, we'll
you know.
address that.
And the only reason I say that is because if this kind of open web arch, if that is the opportunity for signage, and it's not made in a way that you can put a sign on it, and you can't get the dangly sign approved, then you kind of hamstrung yourself a little bit. So if that
Well, that's a
makes
good
you
point.
think about something
we'll
different
look at
there,
that.
then,
I
then
mean,
look at it. But I don't have a problem with this.
Okay.
I just didn't want you to get down the road and go, well, we built this thing and now we can't get the sign approved. But that's
Okay.
the only way it works.
Gotcha.
But I think it's thin enough. It's subtle. If you grow something on it, it's even more subtle. It does reflect the other side, so I'd be okay with it.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate it. Item 3, discussion of an addition accessory at 117 3rd Avenue North. Brandon Pretty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Brandon, give us a quick
Yeah.
overview here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. So this is a small building behind the primary building off 3rd Avenue. I believe in looking at some information staff gave us on the register document, it was originally a garage for that house. It's been pretty significantly altered over time. I don't know that there's any visible, like, original elements on that. Everything, there's, hardy siding, metal roof that's, 20 years old. You can see some of the detailing inside, I'm assuming those are original wood columns and beams, but as far as the outside, windows, doors, all those have been changed over time. So what we wanted to do here, client is looking to put a small little bar area there, which is within the allowable zoning, and then build a little covered patio off of that. So what we tried to do is it's a simple building, just wanted to keep what we're proposing simple, brought the roof line down so that we weren't overwhelming or over top of the roof line of the existing building. It is a relatively wide span, so I wanted to get as much height for that truss as I could. Simple columns. We'll have a low wall on one side to help deal with, there's a little bit of grade change, and then open on the opposite side. So really just wanted to keep it as simple as we could keep it. It's not visible from the street, or if it is, you got to really, really want to look to see it. By the street, I mean coming down 3rd Avenue. It's hidden back there. So that's what we proposed.
Okay.
Love to
Thank
hear
you.
Feedback.
Emily.
So, I pulled up the National Register for this property, and it says that the National Register describes this structure as an early 20th century garage that's been extensively altered as a shop. Its facade has been retrofitted with circa 1980 single light, fixed vertical windows, and paneled doors. Across the facade is a decorative wood pergola feature. The exterior has vinyl siding, and it lists the structure and the principal building as contributing. As proposed, here's the existing photos and other existing photos. Let me scroll to this. So, this current square footage of the building is 831.94 square feet, and the proposed addition of the new covered patio is 961 square feet, which is 115% of the original building's footprint. Additionally, a site plan is needed to show the whole lot and the principal building's footprint in relation to this existing existing structure. And Additionally, the guidelines do recommend to utilize a material so that there is differentiating and but also for it to be compatible, but differentiating materials. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any comments? Want to go, Susan?
Well, I think that my first thing is I do appreciate that you brought photos of the building in front. That's very helpful. I am concerned that it is quite a bit larger than what we would typically allot for this type of building. And that's my comment.
Josh.
Okay, I'll go. I think it does feel, I know that, I know this building well because you can see it from that parking area that I know is not part of the public right of way, but lots of people do see. It does feel pretty overwhelming to that structure when I look at the renderings, just in context. And I know that there's not a huge space, or at least my memory is there's not a huge space between the back of the historic building and this accessory structure. Maybe I'm wrong there, but I don't remember it being very big. But I think a site plan will help with that. And then my other comment is just from staff's perspective, if when this comes before us and we have the staff report, if you can make sure to speak to, because I know this is not conditioned space, but it is a very large, kind of feels a little bit like a carport, but it's not, but it's got walls, but they're half walls, how all that fits in with the calculations of the percentages. Those would be my comments.
Thanks, Josh. Brian.
So I understand it's 15% of the footprint of the building?
It is
115%.
115 of the structure. We didn't have the footprint of the principal building. So that's another thing we'd need in with a site plan of just to show the principal building, so we just can calculate some of these figures.
And when they're adding on to an existing accessory structure, as long as it doesn't exceed the 50% of the original footprint,
Yes, sir.
doesn't that go into our guidelines? I mean,
Yes, sir.
so we really wouldn't consider the accessory structures. I mean, how much percentage of it was being added?
I believe so. I will say also the guidelines do not recommend adding, which they're not, the guidelines aren't really clear on adding this kind of covered patio kind of area. They do recommend to not utilize like adding like porches. And so that is kind of the closest thing that we could find to try and apply it to this. This is just kind of a gray area within the guidelines.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I think what Emily's hitting on is that it is an atypical thing, but this is an odd spot in town just because it is a very urban spot, but it's this outbuilding sort of floating in a bunch of parking lot. So in one regard, I think it's like, okay, I could see something like this here. The addition is big. I'd be curious because I don't think the percentage control measures are there in the guidelines for like, oh, you can only add on so much on an accessory. I think it's just based on the main house. So I'd love to see that, whatever it is, so we know exactly what you're asking, whether you're under it or over it. And, I just looking at it, if it can be thinned out a little bit, even just columns and things, that might go a long way in helping it not feel like it's so much. Yeah. Because they're big. They look like they're, 12 by 12 posts or something. They're big. They look big.
Yeah, it was either 8 by 8, 10 by 10.
Yeah. So
A little bit of heft.
thinning things up. I know you have some wall and some grade to work through there, but check all that footprint stuff. Again, I guess where I stand on this particular one is the back of the existing house, which is a very cool house, but the back has a very peculiar addition on it with a really long, flat gable on it.
Yep.
And so that coupled with we're on the back end of downtown and a parking lot, I'm a little less sensitive here than other places, I could say, because across the parking lot people have coolers and stuff facing this. So it's I'm considerate of that, but if it can be thinned up, if you can find the square footage number that you could really like, this is what we really need and can live with, I'd consider that. So any other thoughts, Brandon?
Well, a couple things to clarify. This would be opposite the parking lot. Now, you know, once you get around the building, but this would be the face. We're not proposing any sort of alterations
Okay.
on that face. And then we're not moving any closer to the primary house than where the accessory structure is now. We come inside of that. I think it's a foot or two, and then that's, you can kind of see in the north perspective. We're inside of that, so we're not proposing to get any closer to the main house. But
So is
no.
this entrance to this, I see this sidewalk on this floor plan. That sidewalk is between the primary?
That's correct.
Okay.
And that's existing. That's
Okay.
a little existing aggregate walk. And there's a fence, and then the house is on the other side
Okay.
of that fence.
Yep.
So that
I'm
walks up against
following
the
you now.
fence.
Okay.
And the use would be for a beer garden?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
So we're just talking about an open area probably in the summer months,
Yep.
when the weather is nicer to.
Correct. That's right.
Okay.
You can see, well, on that west perspective, it's open. There's no walls, doors, any of that. Wanted to keep it, you know, as open as light as we could. Again, to your point, the size, you know, the size is larger, but didn't want to overwhelm the
Sure.
existing accessory any more than we had to. Let me ask, would it help to the differentiating between proposed and existing to go away from the horizontal siding, do like a different siding treatment with a different, like a complementary color to
Yeah.
underscore a little bit that it's different, or would that?
I don't know that I would do that.
That's
That just
kinda-
draws attention to it.
Well, that's
Yeah.
I kind of did it, and I looked at it, and I was like,
And I will say, you know, in a certain sense, you could say that the way the accessory's done, it almost looks like a carport
yeah,
and a converted carport to your new use.
Yeah, and it'd be different if there was historic wood siding on the old out, but it's already hardy. So
Yeah.
I think that ship sailed long ago,
yeah,
in my mind. But and I think the intent of the guidelines is that you see an old structure, you immediately know that's old. This is new. It's hard to tell it's old except now, just
I didn't
looking at the
know-
pictures.
yeah. Well, I didn't know it was that old until we got the information Emily provided about where it was on the registry.
Staff
I didn't know,
report,
did somebody
yeah.
build this in 1960? I had no idea.
I think also dashing in on your floor plan where the existing gazebo is, because
Okay.
there is something there.
Yeah, that's
And I
right.
think it helps you to say there's something there. We're not adding
Yeah.
that much more footprint than maybe it's a third of it was a gazebo, but I think it helps your case to show that there has been a structure there, and I just see that in the pictures, but not anywhere else.
There was an additional comment by staff from zoning. The new use will require parking, and the building plans would not be able to be approved until parking has been addressed by them.
Okay.
Got a carport. All right. Is that all? Thank you.
great.
Thank you, Brandon.
Thank you all very much. I
Appreciate it.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much. Item number 4. New construction, 1845 William Campbell Court, Magnolia Hall, Lot 7. Matt Smith, applicant, and team. Don't forget to turn your mics on. Whoever would like to kick us off with some initial comments, give us an introduction, and we'll pass it to staff.
Okay. So lot 7, I think based on y'all's previous feedback, we had not changed a whole lot about the massing, but what we had changed was kind of the detailing. I think the feedback last time was that the style didn't really feel appropriate to be that close to the mansion. So doing something a little more classic. So we thought we kind of reworked just the detailing on this and the style of windows and some other trim elements to make it feel a little bit more like a classical revival style home. which we felt like was a little more appropriate. And we've also simplified some elements and lowered the roof ridge substantially to be well below the mansion. So those are kind of the major changes to 7 that we'd love to get y'all's feedback on.
Okay. Anybody else, any of the rest of your team have comments? Good. All right, we'll go to Elizabeth, or is it Emily?
It's going to be me. I messed up on the
Okay.
chair agenda. My
Okay,
bad.
no problem.
So, this building, I don't know why this didn't populate right on the packets, but it's going to be it is lot 7, so it is directly across from Magnolia Hall.
Everything's working except that one
And that it's
the O2 sheet. Okay. Oh, so nobody has it. Okay. Okay.
Those are so large, but
well, whenever you look at the kind of aerial site plan, it is directly across from Magnolia Hall. And so we just wanted to comment about that. And based on some of the inspiration images, it utilizes some transoms. And we know that in several of the previously approved homes, the transoms have been omitted from the designs, but since it is appropriate to this architectural style and within the inspiration images, we just wanted everyone's feedback on the transoms that are in this photo. Additionally, we wanted to comment on this left elevation, and next time it comes before the commission, can we have it being a little bit transparent so we can tell if these are windows or doors? We believe that this is a door, but we're wondering if y'all could do a little bit of transparency just so we can see everything. And then the last thing we have is the chimney here on the left-hand side. And the guidelines do say to, have them be appropriately sized as compared to some of the other chimneys that are in the historic district. And so we just wanted to call that out. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners.
I'm looking at the front elevation and the portion to the left. Is that a screened-in porch? Or it's reading as a screened-in porch. I'm, it's not that I'm like, but I just we've never approved a screened-in porch, to my knowledge, since I've been on the commission. So I just wondered how that fits into with our guidelines.
Any staff
I think
have
that the simplification of the project overall is much better, and lowering the roof line and the different details. And I think but I think the thing I'm having a problem with is, again, to my knowledge, we haven't approved one. So.
I did just want to comment. We did not particularly look in to see if we have. I know since my time here, we haven't approved any on the front. I will say that within their inspiration images, if they'll load for us, there are some examples of the screened-in porch on them.
So I would say that instead of a screened-in porch, maybe have it glassed in. And I realize there's a cost difference there, but before we moved, when we lived in Dallas, one of the things that we looked at a lot of when we're looking at a lot of houses that had really badly enclosed porches, the one we bought had the best enclosed porch that I had ever seen, and they had glassed it in. And so it would still, in my mind, had been contributing to the district. So they really, and it made all the difference in terms of me just buying the house, quite frankly. But I think that the feel of it is really works with the house, but I think a glassed-in porch would be better.
When I when I looked at the guidelines, I don't recall there being any prohibitions regarding the screen porches. When you say you haven't approved them, is it because none have come up, or have you turned any down?
None have come up. I mean, we've had screened-in porches on the rear, but never on the front facade.
Okay.
And that's just something we'd have to look into, because this is in the old guidelines. This is not in the new guidelines.
Right.
So, anyway, we can look into that, but to my knowledge, I don't think any have been approved for the front.
And another option for the screening is to have the retractable screening. So it's only, the screens are only down when they want them to be down, and otherwise they can be up. The reasoning for the screen is driven by one of the basic tenets of the designs, of all the designs, is to really increase and maximize outdoor living, which is in response simply to the way people live now. And so the outdoor spaces, the courtyard and the porches, are conceived as basically outdoor living rooms, where people will spend quite a lot of time. So while in large part, the exterior expressions of the house are very traditional and rooted in history and the local history here and local precedent, we are also incorporating these modern features according to how people live today. And on this particular lot, it seemed like a good solution to have this porch address both the courtyard and the front of the house, and it was conceived also as what it looked like on the approach. So we were careful to mass it and detail it appropriately, because when you approach this house, that's visually the first thing that you see.
I think I'll echo what Commissioner Besser said. I would just note, I think the inspiration photos, at least the ones that I recognize, those are not screen porches. I think they are glassed in. So I'm reserving, but I can't think of another one where we've had a screen porch. And maybe if you have other examples of homes in Franklin where there is a screen porch on the front, that would be helpful, because I'm sitting here trying to think of an example of one, and it's not coming to me. So, but I think it's really attractive, and I think, obviously you got the roof line down, so.
One thing that we did relative to the last submittal was, whereas in the previous submittal, the upper gable was open and the screening went all the way up into the gable, now it's more restrained.
Brian, any thoughts?
Well, to Josh's point, both of those inspirational photographs, it is glass. There's glass in both of them that are enclosed. I think that, like you said, it is simplified. The neoclassical look might be a good, kind of contrast to what you have in the Italianate look with the mansion. I'm just trying to get my head around all this. Now, on the pediment, so it's the pediment of the little porch with the side lights and the window. How far does that project out? Is that like a nice actual stoop, or is that just a very shallow pediment?
So right now, I think it's about 2 feet out, but we could certainly, you can kind of see in the floor plan on the top there, it would come out to cover that little stoop. And I think we've got room on the side if we wanted to increase the depth on that, but we don't want it to feel like a little stuck-on element. So we did try to make that have some heft to it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get the depth of what that might be.
Yeah.
And its symmetry, how it works with the window at the top in the gable, and then the 3 at the bottom with the transoms, and its location to all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But those are the only comments I have.
Thank you. I'm going to start with the windows and make my way back to the porch. I still don't feel like the transoms are helping you on this front. I think if they're just really big double hungs, I'm looking at all the other elevations here, and it looks like your head heights match, except in whatever room that is, the main windows would have a lower head height. And it's like, well, at that point, I don't care. But I think being directly across from the mansion, anything we can do to minimize the height by putting elements that are scaled appropriately to that front-facing gable is a good thing. The screen porch, I really don't have a problem with it as you've drawn it. I would like it glassed in too, but it's just as transparent screen too. And I would venture to guess that all these sunrooms and enclosed porches we see all around Franklin and Nashville and across the United States were just porches at one point. I know that's true because we've done some of them. So I think for me, the location and what plane it's in is a little curious because usually when we see these, they aren't in line with the colonnade necessarily across the front. It's usually step back, or there's some of the other pictures, there's a gable interrupting the front entry porch from kind of the side entry porch that was enclosed. This is one kind of continuous colonnade of porch, and part of it seems to be enclosed. So I don't know if stepping it back a little bit helps, but then you get into kind of your living room windows. I'll let you do with that what you wish, but I don't have a problem with it being on the front necessarily. I don't have a problem with it being screened. The front-facing gable is still has some boldness to it, I guess I could say. I keep looking at this low-slope porch roof, and if it just continued straight across it, if that porch would just feel like a much just smaller element, but you still get the same footprint, you can still gable it out the other end with that low slope. So I still think it's definitely a competing element on the front. It's a lot better than it was, and I'm just not sure it's in the right plane. And then to Brian's question about the front door, the pediment and columns are literally setting on the front wall, just a couple feet, right? But the door is stepped back like, 8 feet? 6, 7, 8 feet? So I think there's some depth there, but I don't know that roof element, the pediment portico thing is really going to read that heavy. And I don't know what the rules are about overhangs over setbacks in this jurisdiction, but
It can be up to 6 feet.
6 foot projected over the setback.
Mm-hmm.
But the porch columns can't be, just the roof can be.
It's just the roof overhang, so it's the appurtenance.
That's a serious roof overhang. What I was going to say is if those columns are what we call trabeated, and they're just a half column pasted on the wall, it might be more appropriate for this architectural style to make the overhang a little deeper and put them on some traditional brackets on each side or something of the sort. And if you get deep enough that you can actually have the full column sit there, then I feel a little differently about that because we'll see the full column. You get that depth and that shadow line that returns. So I think overall this is shorter, which we asked for. It's less busy, which we asked for. I think it's in a very sensitive spot in that crook in the road. But I actually like that the first thing you see is a transparent element. It's this screen porch. And so that softens it for me a little bit. If that big front-facing gable were on the other side, you'd be driving into a big mass. I think this steps your eye up gradually, so I like that. Those are my comments. Anybody else? Any specific questions you all have?
Just to make sure I understood your comment on the brackets, on the pediment, are you proposing instead of, or not proposing, but the idea you mentioned, instead of columns or instead of pilasters, having brackets that hold up the pediment?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
almost like corbels, not really brackets, but
Yeah, those
brackets say
classical
craftsman,
corbels.
but big corbels that
Right.
would be traditional on a home of this style. I almost said vintage, but it's not vintage.
When I was sketching at it, I think that was my first thought.
It was.
In fact,
But it could be, then it could be maybe a little deeper and not feel like your columns have to go out past the setback or something. But we're not here to design it for you. We're trying to make that pediment look as authentic as it can feel and not feel cheapened by its depth.
okay.
So
Can I ask the other commissioners if we did push that screen porch back slightly behind the colonnade, is there a different opinion on what we've done?
or take the roof across and change the gable front. I mean, how do y'all feel about it? Same?
I think remove the gable, let the porch go straight across. It would remove more of the mass of that where your eye's drawn to it. I understand the corbels may be a great idea. I like. It seems to me the way the columns continue across, it creates this uniformity, especially for a pediment, to hold up a pediment.
Right.
So what you have there, I think, works as well.
Wish it were about that much deeper.
I do think that removing the gable and taking the roof straight across would help. And honestly, I think I just need to ponder the screen porch because, again, to my knowledge, we have not approved a screen porch since I've been on the commission. So.
My only other question from the non-design standpoint, designer standpoint is, if you did change the gable, would that help you lower the fireplace, the chimney at all, or no?
Maybe, yeah, a little bit.
If that's part of staff's comments is on that end.
Part of that is just a code thing.
Yeah, but you've got to be
210.
so far above, yeah. I figured that might not
Right.
help, but it might.
Anything else, Matt? Nothing? All right. Thank you all. Are you next? All right. Item 5, 1849 William Campbell Court, Lot 9. Did I skip one? Nope, 9.
It's supposed to be, yeah, it's on.
Lot 9. We did 8
Yes.
last week. Okay. So, okay, give us the intro again, please. Thank you.
So I think again on Lot 9, we just tried to address the comments that we had gotten, I think back in August at the TRC meeting that we came to. So we had reduced the height again just a little bit, kind of reworked that second story gable and dormer, and looked at kind of the transoms and adjusted those window heights a little bit as well to be a little more scaled to where y'all had asked them to be. But overall, not a ton of changes. These are more subtle changes, I think, just kind of small tweaks on this one based on the feedback y'all had given.
Okay. Staff.
So the applicant has done a good job incorporating the feedback from the previous attended DRCs, and Lot 9 is an antebellum Southern Classical Revival inspired house. The guidelines recommend that infill principal buildings should not exceed the height and width ratios for windows and doors of adjacent buildings by more than 10%. The specifications for the windows in this proposal were not included, and we'd like to call attention to the floor to ceiling height windows. And in previous homes, the transoms have been removed and were approved in doing so. Transoms are typical for this style of house, and we would like DRC's feedback on this as well.
Thank you. Susan, you want to start, or you want to start with Brian this time? You got voluntold. Thank you.
I was going to start out with transoms everywhere. I mean, overall, it's right behind. You're talking about now. We're going behind the mansion. I mean, overall, it's an attractive design. I do think that, we have saved these transoms for special features on the house. And on this one, We've got special features in 3 places with transoms above the doors too, the entrance doors. I'd like to see more consideration in that, especially on the porch portion. And those would be my principal comments.
Thank you, Ryan.
I don't
Josh?
have anything beyond that other than yay for being even the chimney below height. So
Thank you, Josh. Susan, did you have some comments?
So this is really referencing the Dozier House, which is one of my favorite houses in Franklin. I have a strong connection to that. And I think in this case, the transoms do work.
Yeah. I agree. I don't mind the transoms. Too much of a good thing can be bad. So just be careful with them. It looks like, based on the side elevations, that's it. It's just on the front. I will say, overall, after looking at the other houses that we've reviewed, because these lots are shorter, they're just not as deep a lot, I think the scale and proportion of these houses is a little better. The other ones, I mean, it was like a football field long, it felt like. These feel really good, even in the perspectives. They feel like a good scale in comparison to the mansion. So I'm glad for that. Don't have a lot of comments here. On the window thing, one of the things that I'd be careful of here is, and I don't know how far along y'all are on this, but window pattern, the grills. You've got certain grill widths on the transom versus the window versus above the door. The windows match up pretty well, but if you go with a tall rectangle, stick with the tall rectangle. If you go with wide, short ones, that'd be awesome. But I think this looks really good. Anything else?
Another comment on the windows, and it goes back to what Tyler's saying about the grid pattern, is if you look on the Dozier house, you'll see that you have large panes of glass. You don't have all the divided light that you see here. And so it really draws, at least in this drawing, it really draws the eye to all of the patterns in the glass. And, I'd like to see with something more 1/1 or what you see in the Dozier house.
We'd be happy to take a look at that.
I would second that. I think that, again, just in terms of, this is a Queen Anne Free Classic is what you've designed, and they would typically not have that type of window pane layout. So a 1/1, I think, would be much more in keeping with that.
Anything else? Any more comments from the applicant? Okay, thank you for that one. Next, the same crew. This time Bernie's going to come talk. 1851 William Campbell Court, item 6, lot 10.
So I think lot 10, the feedback from you guys last time was that you liked the design, but again, it didn't quite feel appropriate to this particular area. So we went back to the drawing board with it a little bit and kind of re-looked at what the Tudor precedents were in Franklin, and tried to design it a little more in keeping with those precedents as opposed to the two sort of very formal symmetrical gable Tudor that we'd presented previously. So this is kind of addressing that feedback from you guys. And again, everything's lowered, so we're down in height on all of these. But appreciate your feedback on the new design.
Staff.
I don't know. It's taken a minute to load. The computer must know it's a Monday. So let me zoom in for us. So we have a comment about the windows sitting on some of the elevations right at the watercourse line. And so the guidelines would recommend, and the historic precedent is that it's not common to have them sitting right at the watercourse line, that there should be a little bit of a barrier around it. Additionally, wanted to comment on the front elevation that we did some research into, Tudor, and it's not really common to find a whole bunch of like wood elements. It's common to find more like brick elements on a front porch. And so one of the designs that we did find, it utilized a kind of like a metal railing. And so we just kind of wanted the DRC's feedback, if there were differing materials for that. And additionally, on this bay window, it's not totally common to find a bay window on a Tudor. And so we also wanted y'all's feedback on that. Thank you.
Commissioners, who would like to go first? Ms. Susan.
So I am concerned that the balustrade is wood, and that is not something you typically see on a Tudor. The bay window is, if you look back in the history, like a historic Tudor, you would actually see like an oriel window on a Tudor. So I'm not sure that I have that I see that as problematic. But I think that wooden balustrade is just not working with all the other elements. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh.
Okay, my only comment is not related to this one, but if you look at your inspiration photos, the one in the lower left-hand corner is the home of my daughter's godfather. And that front glass porch there is actually a screen porch with a glass front window. So there's an example, going back to our other one, although it's kind of a half and half. But I've sat on that porch many times and I didn't remember it. But anyway, no further comments from me.
The comment I would have is like in the gables. So you've got like wood siding in the gables, which really takes up a lot of space in the gable area. I'm wondering if you look at your inspirational photographs, you'll see some half timber work, or you see stucco, and you see a lot of that in Franklin in a Tudor style house, either the stucco or the half timber, and that might actually lift it up, actually take it up a notch. And the other comments I agree with.
Thank you, Brian. Kind of piggybacking on what Brian said, I don't mind the break in the upper section of the gable being some different material. I don't think it necessarily has to be in all three places. I think it's making it a little busy. And I say that to also say that the front gable, that's this porch, could use something in that gable. I think it's enough mass that it needs a vent, a window, something, a bracket, something there. But I don't know that all three of these things need that much texture because it's just a lot, especially with the bay. Don't have a problem with the bay. I don't have a problem with the water table going up to the window, being the sill. I'm not sure why that's not in our guidelines, but I can find lots of examples of it. Maybe not here in Franklin, I guess, but I don't have a problem with that. I agree with the railing comments. I think they'd come off better as just something thin, iron, a little more transparent. I like that you have wood columns on the porch and that the front entry has the brick columns. A little bit of kind of texture mashup here because you've got brick steps with what looks like brick cheek walls on each side of the steps, but the foundation is stone. And so somewhere there at an inside corner, those are all gonna touch. In my, I mean, I know the guidelines push towards simplicity. So if it's all the base is brick or all the base is stone, makes sense to me. That's a lot of materials all touching all at once. And then you add the siding in, is a lot going on. So
It shall be stone.
it shall be stone. Yeah. See if on the other elevations. Thank you for bringing the height down. This looks like a total redesign, floor plan wise. I mean, you had a 2-story house. I think you've still got a lot of the same elements, but that not being kind of two symmetrical front-facing gables was a big design change. So thank you for undertaking that. I know it was the other house was lovely, and it's not fun to hear that won't work. But this is much better, and I appreciate that. So thank you very much. Any comments, Matt?
You spoke and we listened. And we agreed.
Teach my wife.
I'm not good at that. Yeah, and I kind of agree with you on the railing too, especially since I'm not sure if we have metal railing anywhere else on the street. So I think that's a good opportunity to set it off. And we feel that this massing works better, and as you mentioned, is more in keeping with the local precedents for Tudor. And I'd be happy to take all of your comments into consideration, especially since I've had the same thought. You know, we landed on siding in the upper portions of the gables, but it was after weighing the options and such. So it very easily could land in another place.
I mean, I agree with what, like I said, there's a lot of materials at the base, and then you hit this brick, and I think Brian mentioned stucco. It can be a very monolithic, monochromatic kind of thing that takes a back seat to all the other textures you have going on. So it's a pretty good idea if that could work, but leave that up to you. Got some good ideas there.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Oh, another one. All right. Item 7 of 8. 1853 William Campbell Court, Lot 11. The same group. Go ahead, Matt.
Jennifer's done such a great job so far.
Okay. Jennifer.
I lost my that one. So lot 11 is a little bit of a curious one. So we had, well, I'll tell you what we did first, and then we can talk about the other piece of it. We listened to y'all's feedback on kind of simplifying some things back. This one still probably is not going to be as simple as some of the other ones, just by virtue of where it is in the development and kind of what we want it to do. But I think given how far away it is from the mansion, we felt like that was an appropriate design choice. But we did pull it back significantly and reduce the height just a little bit from what y'all had previously seen. Also just kind of cleaned up some of the massing to respond to some of the comments that y'all had made. The other thing that has come up, so that's kind of where we were with the submission. We got kind of final grading numbers based on what they're doing out on the site end of last week. And it looks like we actually are going to potentially need to raise the finished floor height on this about a foot and drop the garage down to make that work because there's so much grade fall across the site. So this may change just a little bit. I don't know if you'll want to see some very rough massing stuff, if that would be helpful or appropriate to this conversation, but we didn't want to sort of change it completely without being able to talk to y'all about it first, knowing that that's coming if we turn around and resubmit this. But we would still like feedback on the aesthetic
Okay.
as well as, some of those height questions.
Sure. Staff?
So this is lot 11, and this one is the last one on the cul-de-sac. So, but it is the first one that you'll see on 96 and on whenever you turn on Boyd Mill. So there's an importance on all the houses, but especially this one. I did want to call out that the height, while the height has been decreased a little bit, it is still, it is 35 feet 8 inches, and the mansion's height is 34 feet 9 inches. And so we recommend that it should be diminished just a little bit more, so it is lower than the mansion. Also wanted to call out this wall dormer here on the front facade. The guidelines recommend to not utilize wall dormers. On this front facade, we have a grid pattern in this one window, and then the rest of the windows do not have a grid pattern. And then there's an arched window above the bay window. Additionally, there should probably be a little gap or some brick on the other side of this bay window just for symmetry and everything. I believe that the same comment about the windows being up against the water course is applicable to this. Yes. So it sits at the water course line. And that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Emily. Who would like to go first? Ms. Besser?
I have just a couple I would just concur with what Emily has to say. I do think the bay is probably a bit more prominent than it needs to be. It needs to be reduced a bit. Are we looking at another screened-in porch? Yeah, so I would have that, my same concerns about that. And then again, I think just really.
Glass.
What's that?
It's glass.
It is glass?
This one's
Okay,
glass,
thank
yeah.
you. But I would just concur with what staff has to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Josh?
So, one thing that, especially because we have a number of commissioners who are not here tonight, one thing that I would just throw out as may be helpful as we keep hearing, and I think we're all mindful of the view from 96, New 96. So if there's any way to give us some kind of I'm having a hard time contemplating how much we're going to see of it from 96. Maybe it's a lot, maybe it's not much. You know, I need to drive out there now that more grading work has been done and look at it from that angle. But I think if there's some, because these views and the 3Ds are really helpful, but if you had that perspective, I think that could probably help you all, because I do think that will likely be a concern we'll hear again. And I think of that, for me personally, I always just fixate on that upper porch, which I'm assuming it looks like there are doors, so I'm assuming it still is a porch. Do we know how tall the rail is there on the
3 feet.
three? Okay. Is that, I don't know, I'll let codes do codes, but is that,
For residential, that's the minimum height.
okay. Anyway, I just think those are some of the things that as we get toward the voting meeting, you might hear that would be helpful, that might get y'all going in the right direction.
My comments would relate to the gable. There's just so much going on in that gable. It feels like the entrance, the bay window, they're just all crammed into that, into that gable area. And then that throws the window that goes above the gable far to the left in this case, and you've got the little window to try to balance it above the door. And there's just something about that feature that it just doesn't seem to fit in with what I've seen in Franklin as far as the way architecture is done for an old house, and also the wall dormer. I agree with staff on that, and other comments that have been made so far.
Thank you, Brian. I tend to agree with most of what everybody's saying. So walk me through what you were saying again. The FFE of the house might go up 1 foot, and the garage might go down a foot, so there'd be 2 feet between the two? Is
No,
that
the garage might go down to a basement level. So you'd be going down.
totally underneath?
Correct.
Okay, go down a floor, not a foot.
Correct. So
Okay.
you'd be significantly, it does reduce the mass of that garage at the back elevation to do that, but it would potentially increase the overall height. And we are 6 feet below the mansion here, so even if it is a little taller than the mansion, it sits down much
Sure.
lower. So that's something to consider.
Yeah, I think the height is always a touch point here. If it can be reduced some, it needs to come down some if it's possible. I agree. The front elevation is just really crowded. There's some weird things going on with the eave heights from the front gable to the main roof mast. The eaves don't align, and then there's another kind of benchmark that's the top of this bay, then another benchmark that's the like porch rack and that eave, and then it pops back up to this roof deck, and it's like there's so many ups and downs, and then that kind of massive wall between the double window and the little window and that gable is just there's a balance issue there. And I know that has a lot to do with the floor plan. I mean, it's a direct reflection of those windows open to a space, just like the front door is opening to the space you intend it to, but the bay is really taking up so much of that wall that it's crowding the front door. And if we had all the height in the world, you just widen all this out and that would stretch everything out, but we don't have that. So I think it has to be thought of differently. I don't think this geometry is lending itself towards the type of detailing you're trying to pull off. Other thing I wrote down, is there a fireplace on that upper deck?
It's on the inside, I think.
The elevations, it looks like it's on the outside.
Yes, I think there was an outdoor fireplace.
There's an outdoor fireplace upstairs on the roof deck. Okay. And I don't know how visible that will be, maybe from 96, but nobody else will see it, I don't think, especially if it's up a story and a half because of the grade and you're driving down below. But sort of that's definitely a different detail. I don't know of a second story outdoor porch anywhere. Doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. It just means that's different. So yeah, in my opinion, I think I'm anxious to see the grade changes, what it does to the massing, but I don't think it changes this front, and I think the front elevation needs some rework. It's not quite there. So,
Can I have one more comment? I think that this is the one that we were concerned at, partially because of 96 on the massing of the garage. And I will just say, maybe I'm misremembering what we had before, but as a compliment, I feel like it looks much better and much more demure than it did before. And so especially if that's dropping down to a basement level, that's going to help that even more. And I see the tiki torches are gone from the rendering this time. I do worry about those umbrellas sitting up on that upstairs porch from Highway 96.
We still have the holes for the tiki torches in the
Of course
pedestal.
you do.
We did reduce the mass of that garage so it doesn't read like a big huge garage. And if the garage becomes the garage under version, it will not, you would see it, but it does not affect the height of that gable that's above the doors. So the massing would not significantly change in that case, but the doors would lower, of course.
And what we're seeing on this right elevation, that is the elevation that would face Highway 96.
Correct. So it's a house with two front elevations in a sense, although you see it from a distance.
yeah, and in looking at that elevation, I don't think that long shed dormer between the two gables, if there's a way to break that into pieces, I don't know what that does to your inside without looking at the plan, but again, this is somewhat of a front elevation, but to have a dormer that's, what is that, 30, 35 feet long is that's big, and that's going to be very prominent from 96. So,
And this is exactly why I think if you can give us some perspective, it will
Yeah,
help.
be very
Because, we look at this now and you're like, it's right, you're right on it, but it's not exactly right on it when you're on 96. So I think that perspective will help me for sure.
yeah. Any other thoughts, Matt?
I know that front-facing dormer has been discussed before, and this is an instance where when you have a gable with a knee wall, let's say 4 feet or so, then it becomes real problematic to comply with the guidelines by pushing that dormer back a foot, because then it raises the sill height to, let's say, the sill height might become something like 6 or 7 feet, and the head height of that window might become something like 11 or 12, so it doesn't work within the space of the room. So I'm not clear as to the intent of that guideline, and the also you do see precedent for that type of dormer here in Franklin in the historic district. So again, I'm not sure what the intent. Maybe it's a different type of dormer that they're trying to control. Perhaps they were in their mind thinking of big long shed dormers rather than individual dormers. I'm not sure, but that is an issue, how to make that work within the space if it's not flush.
Any thoughts from anybody on that?
I think the thing that I'm wrestling with a bit, and I don't think we've ever seen a house that has the courtyard on the front facade. Am I reading that correctly?
The courtyard is on the side, and
On the
faces
side,
the
okay.
side.
All right,
So,
thank you. All right,
so
thank
it's
you.
behind the sunroom. It used to be a screen porch, but now it's a sunroom
Okay,
with
all
that
right,
terrace
thank you
above.
for- thank
Then
you for
behind that
clarifying
is
that.
Yeah, I think I've said before that, I'm not totally against wall dormers, but it is a mechanism by which we try to discourage people from using 4, 5, 6 foot knee walls. And so again, it's one of those kind of self-imposed things. It's like, well, if that's hard to contend with, don't have a 5 foot knee wall on the second floor. And all that, as you know, and I know, plays into, well, we also have to have a roof line that fits a certain height, and the only way to get volume up there is to do this. So there's all these competing aspects to that. I think in limited use cases like this, it doesn't bother me. That dormer doesn't bother me at all. But I think the rule is there because, is somebody going to go on the back of a house and just extend the back wall and do a shed, and that's a wall dormer. This is a wall dormer too, but I'm not going to say it's not tastefully done. I think it's okay. It looks good on this house. Of all the issues we've talked about that I have with the front elevation, that's not one of them. But the guidelines discourage them because, where is the line for the next person? And I don't like the word precedent because every project stands on its own, but where do we tell people, oh, now it's too big to be an acceptable wall dormer? So the guidelines read that we don't encourage wall dormers.
And I will say that there is a little bit more wiggle room for wall dormers in this old guidelines, which this PD is vested up underneath. So on the rear, there is flexibility for a wall dormer. And I believe one of the houses that was approved last Monday, it had a wall dormer. And so, but it doesn't recommend to have them on the front and side elevations.
Yeah. So I guess all I can offer is you could bring it up to vote at the meeting and see how people feel about it. It's not problematic for me in this particular instance. The alternative is not having anything there or having something way up on the roof. And this is better than both of those options. Is it better than you lowering the eave? No, but I don't think you're going to do that.
And we could just make it a 2-story house, and then that would just eliminate it.
Yeah.
I say that tongue in cheek, but our intent was to try to keep the stories 1.5 stories
Yeah.
in order to respect the mansion, and that's where this circumstance comes from.
Sure.
And I would consider drawing some inspiration from the Marshall House, the actual dormers on the Marshall House on West Main Street, where the Marshalls live today, and that you see the same similar kind of a dormer on Magnolia Hall. So, something like that would work, and it would be a true dormer rather than a wall dormer, if you could get that to work with your space.
Any other thoughts? That's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate y'all. Thank you. Thank you. Next up, item number 8, discussion of alterations, the Winstead House, 423 South Margin Street, also known as Franklin Grove. Brandon Pretty. Go ahead, Brandon.
So we had 3 items that were kind of left when we had the voting meeting last week. The first one to revisit quickly, but I think eliminate that front door and then the landing we were looking at. We actually found an alternative where we're going to put a pair of doors around the side at the bottom of the interior ramp. That's actually what's been on the approved elevations. We didn't want to shift it. I do think it would have been functionally better there, but I understand and appreciate the visual impact of that, so that's gone away and it's no longer an issue. So the front will be as proved with the windows and no landing out front. The next item was the elevator, and we've got a couple quick little renderings we tried to put together. The feedback we got was really eliminate that. We had tried to keep the pitch as low as we could, but eliminate that pitched roof, go with a flat roof, simplify the cornice. We've got a couple options. One where we did simplify the cornice, but still gave it a little profile. That's the one, if you see that kind of white mass model, that's to the left image.
Mm-hmm.
And then to the right of that, we greatly simplified the cornice and just kept it relatively flat, just a little detailing at the top again, trying to not draw any more attention to that than we had to. So I guess we'd appreciate feedback on those 2 options if that kind of helps address the concern on the elevator portion. Ask you guys if you want.
We gotta wait till they talk first. You introduce all the parts, and then
Okay.
and then Emily will go. We'll come back to it though. I've got notes here.
And then the second piece is that the back stair. Just to provide a little more context for how we got where we got with that, with the stair as previously designed, it was up against the historic house. What that would we moved it out away from the house. We did it, functionally to provide some more space in there, but from the standpoint of thinking of the historic house, and I can't remember if this is within the local guidelines. I know with this being a project on the National Register, it comes under the state guidelines. Being able to be reversible is something that's on that. With it with the position we've put it in, it will be easier to, if that stair had to go away, it's going to impact the existing house the least. The other thing it does is it allows that existing wall to be a feature within the house. There's also the historic kind of small double doors down low with the stair as previously designed. Those would be covered up. Now, from the other side, you'd be able to see them, but they wouldn't be operable. We would have to cover those because that stair has to be rated. Oh, thanks. Sorry.
Can you start over?
This drawing reflect that, because I'm not seeing any of these drawings.
This drawing reflects the current or proposed design. It doesn't reflect the existing, or I shouldn't say existing, the previous design. I'm sorry.
What was approved?
Yes, what was approved. Thank you. So just wanted to provide a little more context for kind of why we're proposing to position the stair differently than what's in the proposed design.
Okay. Ready for staff? Go ahead, Emily.
Okay, so we really appreciate you taking the feedback from the past meeting to reconfigure the main, entry door. Well, not the main entry door, but the, I guess, loading door, I guess we can call it, to the side, so it's not on the front elevation. And we think that it aligns with the guidelines, and just by having it there, there was a lot of discussion on it that the front facade should remain intact, and so great job. Then going to the elevator portion, are both options below the main form?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. That's what our main concern was. The guidelines do recommend that it should be a lower form, and it should not be. It should be subordinate to the historic home, and so both options meet the guideline for that.
Good.
Then for the stairs, and I just wanted confirmation that if you're looking at the very front of the house, the stair addition will not protrude from that.
It does. You're talking about, like, if I'm looking at a front elevation?
Yes, dead
it
on.
It protrudes out the side, but it's about 60 to 65 feet back. So, that also the kind of piece behind that space protrudes as well.
Okay.
But it's, again, with it being that far back, we felt visually it has less impact.
And it's okay if you don't know off the top of your head, but how much does it protrude?
About 8 feet.
8 feet.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Would you like to start?
I will start.
Okay.
So here's what I'm having a problem with. And I actually checked with one of my instructors earlier today. This solarium has a good bit of age on it. And I started there in 1979. She was one of my instructors, and we remember it being there then. So we're creeping up into 50 years for that solarium.
When you refer to solarium, is that the second floor piece or
No,
the lower?
The first floor piece.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we're taking out that solarium, and that's quite frankly, I'm having a problem with that, because I feel like it may not be 50 years old, but we're creeping up into that 50-year time period.
And to clarify, that's part of the proposed, or I'm sorry, that's part of what's been approved. We're not
Right,
proposing
right.
to
And so
remove any
I'm
more.
probably revisiting something that I can't do anything about, but.
Correct. Yeah, it was approved for that little solarium portion. It was approved to be demolished in October 2022.
Yeah. So I guess I can't do anything about that. So I guess I'm having a problem with the whole thing, because that just seems like, and I think it's still going to be pretty prominent from the street. And I think that's a problem, because that solarium just was kind of tucked back in there. And yes, it did project out some, but this is going to be pretty visible from the street. And so again, just, that's my own history, but I think that I'm having a problem with the addition to the left. Thank you.
Yep.
Brian?
So I'm going to, first of all, address the, what you were calling an entrance for the museum pieces. And that's great that's been moved. But I'm going to, so in the original drawings that was approved, that part where you would go into the side was an ADA ramp. Is that still an ADA ramp?
Yes.
And what we approved was the doors would go right into the ramp rather than going into what this is now a museum building in the back. So this would be a change to have the doors actually go in directly into the museum building rather than into the ramp.
No, and I'm not sure if it's shown on this. I think we had a pretty quick turnaround to get this submitted. We made the decision to shift the door after. There should be a set of double doors at the bottom. If you're looking at sheet 2 with the floor plan on it, right above where it says storage, right there, that's where those double doors would go.
They were exterior. They would
Correct.
be exterior
Yes, sir.
right there.
Yeah,
So
that's
you're proposing to eliminate those and instead put them at the museum.
No, I'm proposing to keep those.
Oh, to keep those. Okay.
Yep.
So that comes right into the ramp.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
So I didn't see that on the drawing, so that's what kind of.
That and that was a piece I just didn't get the door put on there in time.
Okay, so that would be the entrance for, instead of the front, you'd use that side
Correct.
entrance.
Yes, we'll use that to load things. The drive comes beside it. That's the plan, as long as Andy King doesn't have a problem with loading there. I don't think we should.
Elevator tower, I would go with option 1. That would
Good.
be my suggestion, simply because the other looks like the roof was blown off.
Yeah.
And it was never put back.
Doesn't have like a top.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Agree.
It looks like something's missing. That's just aesthetically. I want to go back to the stairs and the protrusion that you have on the side that we see that's currently, I think, going to be part of the stairs. The director's office would be adjacent to it, and then the stairs.
Correct.
In the previous plan, the stairs were parallel with the original structure.
Correct.
And because of that, you didn't have that extra protrusion at the top. And now they've been turned perpendicular.
Correct.
And that's why you're having to do that.
Yes, correct.
And I would advocate keeping it parallel to the house. And you mentioned something that could be reversed. Well, you could actually put in, if there are type of stairs that are for emergency exit or getting to another floor, not used all the time, you could make that freestanding in the house without actually connecting it to the original wall.
That's right.
And that could be easily removed. And it would keep from having that protrusion of 8 feet for the perpendicular staircase that's being proposed now.
Yep.
It would cause a little bit different floor plan than you're proposing. But it'd go back to the original intent of what was originally approved.
Yes. So because that stair will have to be a rated stair, we would probably end up having to build a wall, just a full rated wall inside of the historic wall, which would, you could do that, and then the stair would be freestanding, so that piece would stand on its own. There may be tying into foundations, maybe an issue, but that can be done. I think the piece I was looking at and plan is that would cover that up, so you kind of don't, from that side at least, wouldn't experience the original wall. You've got those little double doors that are there. Those would be something we could utilize, and that would you would have some flow within the staging area and then the gallery area, and I think they probably use that staging area for some displays. That, while I agree the protrusion is popping that out a little bit more is not ideal. To me, there was a trade-off where I get to keep and preserve a little bit more of that original house if I can shift that stair kind of away from where that wall is.
And that is one of our dilemmas on our as commissioners, is that we have no purview over what goes on inside of any of these structures. Ours is all exterior. And how aesthetically it blends into the neighborhood and works with the neighborhood.
Yep.
And because this is such a prominent location all around, and even from South Margin, you're going to be able to see that from the exterior. And so considering that part of it, I have to say, if you could make the staircase work on the interior and preserve that exterior view shed, well, that would be my preference and suggestion, rather than what is being proposed.
Okay. And we did try to do that I would argue this is probably the least visible elevation, both, with how the gardens lay out. You're pretty far back from South Margin, you're down the hill. So it would be visible, but we tried to, basically tried to do it in the, if we're going to make a change like that, do it in a spot that's got the least visibility, but understood.
All right. Thank you for moving the loading door. The elevator tower, I actually prefer something in between those two.
Option C.
And the reason I say that, if you look at the side elevation, let's say page 4, bottom of page 4. If that cornice that's shown would align with the old sleeping porch, which aligns with the eave of the mansion, that cornice traveled through,
It just popped.
and the whole trim detail became, the cornice had a parapet, a look of a parapet was all trimmed and painted the same.
Yeah.
And then the head height of those louvers came down to match the windows. Now it fits the house, but it's decidedly different, and it's definitely taller, but you've minimized the height. You've taken what Brian likes about having a termination point, but you pulled the termination point down, you pulled our eye down. I think it's an in-between.
Yeah.
So it's not unterminated like the one that didn't have a cornice, but it's a combination of the two, I think, could get you there and look like this goes.
Yeah.
It doesn't look too tall at that point. I think that could help. I don't know what to think about this stair. I don't like it sticking out the side. I don't think that supports what the guidelines kind of recommend in terms of this kind of front silhouette, thing. I know it's a long way back, but what's different about the building that's protruding back is it's sort of connected with what kind of looks like a breezeway. I know it's not, but from somebody from South Margin's going to look and go, it just looks disconnected. It's like an outbuilding. And until you get up close, you don't know that it is even connected. This looks like the second story of the house, and you're not going to have a perspective to know it's not part of the house until you get back there. So I feel like the table's flipped in terms of that museum mass sits on its own, and we can kind of see its corners and edges and the hip and the roof turn. This is a little different because you've got this office mass that's been there for a long time. I taught here. I was interviewed in that little cube. So I know that room well, and you're extending it for office is part of the extension and the stair. And I hear what Brian's saying, can it just fit in that box that's already there? And the answer is, yeah, it could, but you don't get your offices then, either one of them. So I know you're looking for some square footage. I don't have a solution for you except that this doesn't necessarily meet the intent of the guidelines because it's just visible from the front. We may not have ever approved the first box if it were to have come up. That's been on there for, how long has that thing been there? A long time. But if that were to come as a new design and we just had this kind of typical, I-shaped, or I always call them T-shaped. I don't know why they call them I-shapes, but this kind of T-shaped original house, we would all be aghast that anybody would add anything, a box on the roof with just a box, a straight up box. We were fussing about wall dormers. That's worse than that. And now we're kind of adding to something that is there, but not really conforming anyways. And we're kind of making it an additional degree of non-conforming. So the whole thing feels odd to me and is a hard sell for me. 'Cause it's like, well, especially since it sticks out the side. Now, all that to say, we allow additions on the back, and this is the back. But as soon as you peek out the side, now we're not talking about just the back anymore. So if you can tuck it around the back, I say that, and in the same breath say, man, I sure don't want to cover up that back gable because it's part of the original house. That back rear-facing gable with those funny, really long Italianate eaves, all that. So I don't really want to cover that up, but the guidelines don't recommend against covering up the back of a house, but they do recommend not covering up or protruding out the sides. So, you know, I don't know the solution. I just know that this is not supported by the guidelines, and I have a hard time going beyond what staff would recommend because this isn't a scheme that I kind of believe in yet either. But at the same time, I don't want to lose that back elevation. If there's a way, I keep thinking, is there a way to, stick with me here, pull the stair back and it's detached from the house. So you've got this storage room in plan and it goes up and has some little connector hallway that kind of seems like a second story breezeway. Does that touch it more gently? I don't know.
When you say back, like towards the rear of the house?
Yeah, if you look at the floor plan, there's a storage room off the museum. It's like, could it sit back there and come up and have a very delicate touch connector to that hall? It doesn't get you your office extension, but I think you got to look at it again. I just don't think it's there yet. From what we approved to where we're headed now, I'm not comfortable saying that I feel good about it being within the guidelines or close to it. Any other thoughts?
So on your floor plan where it shows the, let's see, that shows second floor. Well, I just think we could look at the second floor as well. But where it shows assistant's office, isn't that the area where the staircase was originally proposed to be?
Yeah, that red dash box, if you can see.
Yeah, it was actually on that side.
Correct.
So, I mean, at the time, it fit within the framework without protruding because it was parallel to that side of the building.
Correct.
And that's where it was originally.
Correct. Well, that's, yeah,
I mean,
when you
where
say
it's
original,
proposed.
the approved design, yeah.
That's right.
Previously approved. Yeah.
And that box has been there before
Quite a while.
your time there.
Yeah, my time, yes.
Yeah, so
So it was
there's an old box there of
Yeah,
some sort.
it was utilizing that space for the stairs.
Correct. I mean, I would assume that was going to have to be rebuilt. Just what you would do to put a stair in there, you're going to have to, and it's got some disrepair issues. So, but it would go back within that
You
mass.
probably got a lot of disrepair issues.
Couple.
But anyway, that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, and I keep looking at this knuckle on the other side of the house where the elevator tower's going.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of building there now, which isn't showing up here, but there were classrooms there with little gas heaters and all kinds of weird things in there. That's a more public side of your building because the gardens are over there, but there's some mass to hide behind it. And it may make sense to at least look at, well, I've got this, maybe all my circulation, vertical circulation needs to be tied together over there. I don't know what that does to your travel distances and dead end corridors and all that, which is why this stair's here.
Yep.
But
Read my mind.
but I'll let you all deal with that. But consider where else it might fit. I just don't think this supports, what the guidelines call out. So, any other comments?
I mentioned the site visit, and I think we still want to do the site visit. I think that'll be really helpful. And maybe even when we go out there, have some stakes in the ground so that we know where, what your thinking is. So I still would like to see that. I think this building, and granted, Tyler and I are, we're connected to it because we taught there, but I think it's so important to the city. So it's, this is probably one of the most significant buildings in the city. And so we're just very cautious about how we move forward.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Oh, and we want to do what the community would be proud of as well.
Sure.
Tyler, are you suggesting an L-shaped form? Is that what you're saying, is where the stair would be on the end of that gable, and then where the stair
Well,
was
no.
originally might be saddlebags for offices?
That's the conundrum is, I don't want you to cover up any of that cool old brick and gable either, but it is the back. If there were a way to preserve that eave and set below it, it's fairly tall.
Yeah.
And put that stair on that back. I mean, the back has pieces on it already.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
there's a way to do that and preserve that eave and all those
All the
decorative
detail.
elements and set that stair just on the back, maybe that works.
And that's part of the challenge with those brackets on the corners.
Yeah.
You can't, to get the
Yeah.
vertical height a stair needs, you can't get
Well, the
under them.
brackets, again, we're not here to figure out the means and methods, but maybe they can come down and get stored, and if ever somebody
Yeah.
needs them and wants to put them back, they'd be there.
Well, a comment to that, looking at some of the renderings, if this is what you're talking about
Yeah.
in this area, what you're looking at in the brick facade with the two windows is the only original portion of the house that you see from the rear.
That's right.
I mean, it'd really be a shame to cover any of that up because it is the only original portion.
I agree.
That's what I was saying. It's like I'm torn
I-
between
and
would I
I-
rather
I-
see
I
it
don't-
out the side or
I agree, and I don't mean to be flippant, but that's kind of why we were really wanting to do it on that
yeah.
other side, because that, aside from, to your point, it's
But the
It's a
original, so what is approved had nothing to do with this back part. It was actually on the side parallel with it.
that's right.
So it would not affect the very rear of the house from obscuring what we see.
Yeah.
So
But
we're talking about two different things
Yeah.
altogether.
yeah,
And what I would say though, in a 2D elevation like this, that's all we see here, but that has a side face there too, and we don't see buildings straight on. So when you're in the gardens, you're going to see what has been covered up a long time is the side of that I-shape form of the house.
that's right.
We're going to expose all those old skinny doors and all that. I don't know if there's any on that side anymore, but there
They're not remaining.
used to be a library. The library that opened to the solarium and then popped out to the other side. Anyways, we'll have some reclaimed historic fabric there exposed, but see what y'all can do. I know you're in a conundrum. I understand the necessity of it. I understand why it needs to be in that vicinity because that's the other direction you need for people to run in a fire.
Yep.
So see what you can do to come up with a different creative solution. We'd love to see something different.
Okay. All right. Excellent.
Perfect. Is that all? Anybody else? Thank you all very much.
right.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
being willing
Thank
to
y'all.
come so quickly.
Merry Christmas.
All right, if that's it, move to adjourn. We don't even have enough people to second or vote. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you so much.